What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Talking to Vitoria podcast. I'm sorry, Talking to the Doll podcast. My name is Alfredo. I'm here with Cristiano Oliveira,
What's
sit
happening?
next to me.
Hola.
Up in Toronto in the Great White North, Mr. Steve Santos and Dave De Oliveira.
I like Dave.
What's going on?
How's it
Dave's
going?
actually in Hamilton, not Toronto.
He looks like Captain
To me,
Morgan.
Canada is all Toronto.
Yeah, we all live in igloos, I know.
Also, making a special appearance tonight. You may remember him for some of the national team podcasts we have done. He was also a co-host of myself and Cristiano and Full of Bulls podcast, which is still alive. Full of Bulls podcast.
I think you're missing the ending of that, but that's fine.
He has left the Northeast, the frigid Northeast, and moved down to Miami to work for Being Sports. He currently works for Being Sports, and a lot of you know him as Capsudo, but he's also big soccer head New York. Eric Krakauer. What's going on, Eric?
I'm great. It's pretty frigid down here as well. It's
Frigid.
great to be back on a podcast with you fellas.
Great. Well, just
I'm gonna send him a care package. I'm gonna send you a couple of coats over there, and I feel so bad for you, bro.
what's the temperature? Just what's the temperature?
Today it was in the 70s, but it was all the way down in the 50s a few days ago.
É legal, tem que ser, man. É legal, tem que ser.
Yeah, well,
Ai, Jesus.
anyway, on tonight's podcast number 267, we will look back at the derby, Benfica versus Sporting. We'll also look back at the Moreirense game, which happened this past weekend, which finished the first round of the Portuguese Liga NOS. And we'll look ahead to Braga, which is the first game of the new round. So this will be the second time Benfica will play Braga this year, for the league at least. So let's get right into it. We'll start with the Sporting game since that came up first, and big derby, as we expected. Benfica not as in good of form as Sporting has been, so there was a lot of anticipation for this game as far as what Benfica was going to be able to do against Sporting, who has been a little bit more consistent than Benfica this season. So we were expecting a good Sporting, as we have seen all season, and the biggest thing was for us to see what Benfica could do against the Sporting. You often hear Cristiano talk about Benfica plays against a bunch of monkus, that when they play against good teams, they struggle. We've seen that in the Champions League. Even then, they didn't play against very good teams. But, that's past history. So we were all curious to see what Benfica was going to do at Stade de Luz. I don't know if it was packed out or if it was sold out, but it was a pretty good crowd at Stade de Luz against
It was close.
a Sporting who was ahead of Benfica by 3 points, if I'm not mistaken, and there still are, as the result was 1-1. But I'll give you the lineup, and then we'll get into the game. Varela was in goal. Almeida, Ruben, Jardel, and Grimaldo. Feza, Pizzi, and Krovinovic. The midfield triangle. Salvio and Servi on the wings. Jonas, the lone striker up front. Steve, nothing here. What we expected. I think that with Luizão being hurt, Ruben gets the start. And I think that last year we kind of had something similar, or actually 2 years ago, right? We had something. What was it last year when Luizão got hurt? Jardel stepped in, and then Jardel and Lindelof saw that central defender pairing throughout the end of the season. Do you think that this could be something? Because we're seeing things differently. We see Benfica defend with a much higher line, controlling the depth in which the spaces in which the team play in. Do you think that this is something that benefits the team, regardless of losing that leadership that Luizão can bring to this team?
Well, you obviously have two guys with more pace than Luizão there. So in theory, it allows you to play the higher line with a little bit more conscious. But I don't think we played that much higher with Ruben Dias and Jardel. With Luizão, you have to play high because you have no other choice. His brain is what's going to save him from any like long balls over the top or anything that he's going to have to chase down. What I did like about the lineup, though, was that Cristiano was wrong and we didn't see a double pivot of Feza and Samaris. Not saying that it was not unheard of, that it was never going to happen, but I was glad that it didn't happen. The game worked itself out in a way that the way we set up with the two very attack-minded interiors and Pizzi and Krovinovic, the way the game ended up flowing, I think that was another bonus for us. So I was happy to see that Samaris didn't play.
Yeah, and Eric, from a Sporting's fan perspective, and what's your mindset going into this game? Obviously, playing away from the Alvalade and going to a luge that's usually has given you some problems in recent years. What's the mindset? Are you feeling confident?
Well, I'd actually exchanged some messages with Cristiano before the game, where I wrote that if Sporting were to beat Benfica at Luz, I think it would have been an enormous obstacle to overcome and to perhaps build some confidence in that team. Not that they weren't confident, but a title-winning confidence that I think is necessary for Sporting to cross that hurdle. I also stated that if they weren't able to perform or if they were to lose this game, it could have very damaging consequences. When you talk about form going into a derby, I think that it goes all out the window. And I think we saw it in the game because, if anything, based on the performances of both teams, it was Benfica that looked like the team in better form. It was Benfica that looked like the more confident team. It looked Benfica that looked like the team that wanted to win that game, despite the fact that Sporting scored first.
On last week's pod, man, we talked about form and we talked about both teams, the way that they obviously have played over the last couple of weeks coming into this game. Benfica's had, Eric, in my opinion, a terrible season. I mean, knocked out of the Champions League, knocked out of the Taça, knocked out of the Taça, knocked out of everything pretty much, with the exception of the Campeonato. This game was a must-have game for Benfica. That being said, we talked about that on last week's podcast where I used the example of a couple of years ago when Benfica was going into a game at the Estádio da Luz, same Estádio da Luz, against Futebol Clube do Porto, and Porto wasn't playing up to Porto standards. If you recall, we all predicted it was going to be an easy victory for Benfica. And like I stated on last week's pod, when it comes to these types of games, whether it's clásicos or derbies, all that stuff goes out the window because these teams are hungry. These teams, they want to play against their inner city rivals, especially in a game like this. Sporting Benfica, all the junk that's being talked about off the pitch, all the junk with Jorge Jesus in the past, all that stuff comes into play. And these guys came and they showed up. They wanted to play and they played well. And I tell you guys, if you gave me $1 million, I think I told you this, Eric, prior to the game, and you told me to put it on one side, I would have put it on the Sporting victory based on form.
Yeah.
But luckily, the form was out the window when it came to this game.
Eric, let me ask you this. In the preview of the game, we actually talked about and discussed what JJ's approach was going to be. Was he going to bring another man into the midfield? Was he going to play with Podence behind Das Bost? What do you think the formation that he playing with basically two defensive guys in Battaglia and William, even though Battaglia is not so defensive, more of a box to box. Do you think that kind of signaled a little bit of fear by JJ?
Not necessarily, because in having William and Battaglia behind that trio of Fernandes, Acuna on the left, and Martins in front, what you do is you give them pretty much some freedom to create the offensive game for Sporting. For me, in terms of lineup or formation, what I saw in the beginning of the game certainly did not worry me, because you're playing at Benfica. Sporting doesn't have a very good record playing at Luz, especially the new stadium, not so new anymore. And we saw Jesus implement the same strategy or the same tactics when he faced Juventus and Barcelona. So I expected to see the 4-2-3-1. What I did not expect was that when Sporting had possession, their initiatives or the attacking processes that developed in the game were just so bland. There wasn't anything particularly impressive about the way they attacked Benfica. They seemed very subdued. They seemed a little bit intimidated by the environment, and I think that had very little to do with formation or player choice.
Yeah, and Benfica allows a goal early into the game, 19 minutes into the game, and Steve, you got to almost feel confident, because up until that point, Benfica was playing well. They kept on playing well. When you're watching this game, do you have a feeling that Benfica is doing enough to be able to overcome this deficit?
The game where Benfica was creating not like clear-cut opportunities, but was creating a lot more chances than we have been accustomed to. It was a Benfica that was able to get to the final third quite often and what looked like quite easily. So and you think that your time may come, but as I'll have to tell you, as the game progressed, and we kept on just missing that little bit of efficiency in front of goal, missing that killer instinct, that little bit of need to get the goal, to make the final pass correctly, so that the finalizing player will have a good chance to put it away. We were always missing that, and that was like, oh my God, is this going to be one of those days? And at that point, get worried, and obviously we got the goal at the end, and it was a bit easier to breathe. But to the way Sporting approached the game, I found them quite wide open, even though they were playing 4-2-3-1. I mean, so at ease with the ball in the first phase of build-up, and even a little bit further up the pitch against the Jorge Jesus team. Jorge Jesus team so spread apart from each other that even Jardel, I think it was Bas Dost, that he kind of dribbled around and then was able to carry the ball like 30, 40 meters up the pitch, who he then laid off to Savio, and Savio lost as per usual. But that was something that you don't see on a daily basis, especially not against a team that's I mean, it was a very weird performance from Sporting. Yeah. Like Eric said, the connecting football that you tend to see from Bruno Fernandes and Gelson was only there in bits and pieces. It was never consecutive. You didn't see it often. And the way they defended, I mean, up 1-0 fifth minute, that they should have not necessarily bunkered down, but nice tight compact unit. But no, they were all spread out. It was like they almost wanted to force the 1v1 situations, because maybe that if he were to win the ball, or if he was going to get a 1v1 with Grimaldo and Gelson, or whoever the case may be, that would be where they would find some joy, and they would win that 1v1 battle, and things would come from there. But the way that Sporting played, I think it made it easier for us to play the way that we did, and Rui Vitória started just throwing forwards onto the pitch, and it made it even like a good strategy, where not necessarily it always is.
I never once felt that Sporting were out for the 3 points, guys. Not even when it was 0-0, when they took the lead. It seemed to me like JJ was either content with if they got a point out of this game, or the players were a little bit too overconfident, because they never put the foot to the pedal and charged forward. And maybe a lot of that had to do with the fact that Benfica had been struggling coming into this game. They just figured Benfica would, fall to the wayside at some point. And that's why when they did score that goal in the 19th minute, I did freak out a little bit, because I thought, is this going to affect the players' mentality, their confidence? Because is it going to creep back into their minds that their form has been crap all season, that they did get slapped around by a team like Basel 5-0. So now you're playing a Sporting that's hitting on all cylinders, and, the pressure playing in front of your fans. So, I mean, I'm not going to lie. For a second there, I started to question whether that would creep into their minds or not.
Yeah,
but if anything, what you saw, sorry, Alfred, I was going to say, if anything, what we saw once Sporting scored was a revitalized Benfica, a Benfica that all of a sudden gained a sense of urgency, and the response was immediate. The catalyst initially after that goal was Servi on the left, who I thought was a handful. There were many plays that he couldn't finish, but the fact that he was marauding down that left side for Benfica giving Piccini a tremendous headache. And Gelson Martins, as we know, is not a guy who puts in a tremendous amount of defensive work. That energy that Servi brought, I think, was infectious for the rest of the Benfica team, which slowly and surely gained dominance over Sporting.
Yeah, and Eric, at the end of the half, you're watching the game and you're seeing that even though the Sporting is ahead, they haven't had an easy time possessing the ball, getting out of their own half, trying to take advantages that sense of urgency that Benfica was showing. You didn't really see any of that, and then at the turn at the half, coming out again, the same thing. Benfica continued on their and maybe onslaught is a little bit of a very strong word, perhaps, but Benfica continued their domination, their cadence towards the attack.
And I tell you, what was impressive about the first half, guys, was the fact that Benfica realistically played with 10 men because Pizzi was a no-show. Yeah. I don't even recall Pizzi participating in any of the plays of any of the buildup in that whole first half. So I know, Steve, we like to jab at each other, go back and forth, but to me, Benfica was able to, impose their grittiness that we haven't seen all season long. The one thing, like Eric mentioned about Servi, say what you want about the guy, whether he plays well or not, but the one thing you can never question him, and effort. You get guys like Jimenez and stuff, is that these guys put the effort in. And I think, in my eyes, I don't know what you guys think about the game, but not in the first half nor in the second half, I didn't think that anyone in Benfica had a spectacular game. I just think it was a collective effort by everyone. I don't think anyone really stood out. And at the same time, Sporting side, it was a little bit disappointing because I expected a lot more from this team. I'm glad it didn't work out for them, guys. Let's get that straight.
There was very good work, I think, by Feja and Krovinovic.
Yeah, defensively, positionally.
Especially when it came to strangling Bruno Fernandes out of the game. He had very little space with which to do anything. And it was actually quite interesting as well that Gelson in that game had quite a bit of space on the right-hand side. And one of my criticisms of the winger is that he very often, when he has a lot of space, he doesn't do much with it. And I think we saw that over and over. And I think Grimaldo had a good game, but Gelson could have done a lot more to help Sporting, because the primary focus of Benfica's press in the middle, if you could call it press, it was a little bit of a middle block, but that tightening of the middle of the pitch was really to take away the ball from Bruno Fernandes' feet, not allowing him or preventing him from being the creative catalyst for Sporting. And if he's out, it's very difficult for this Sporting to get going.
Yeah, and let me give you a couple stats on PT and Steve, and then I'll let you chime in here. According to Goal Point, 38 touches or 38 possessions by PT. 20 of them he lost possession. He was substituted in the 54th minute, and I don't know if I should say that. That Vitória has balls, or if he's finally seeing things and he's acting accordingly. The other stat that they've looked up is that Benfica is undefeated in games in which PT scores. So he didn't score in this game, but he did score against the Moreirense. But talk to us about PT. We've said that PT is below form. The other thing that I was thinking is that how bad could it be to the point that a coach sacrifices his original formation, that he goes through in the beginning of the season, brings a guy that is going to make more of an impact, Krovinovic, but still wants to keep Pizzi in there. So as a result, he changes the formation. So talk to us about the importance of Pizzi to this team. And we know that you're a huge advocate, and Vitória's decision to substitute him so early.
Well, the decision to substitute him so early was that sign of urgency that you guys are speaking about. Those numbers are a bit shocking, really. I've seen Pizzi play worse than he did in that first half. Not that he was great, but I didn't feel like he was having that I've ever seen him play. But there's no hiding the fact that he's been below par all season. And that's probably a good reason to why we've struggled. I mean, with Jonas, our most influential and most important player the past couple seasons, I don't think there's any real doubt on that. And at this point, if we're struggling and he's struggling, I think that just really shows the importance that he has in the squad. Whether or not, I'm not sure I'm convinced that play the 4-4-2 system the way that Pizzi does alone.
With
As in the
Krovinovic,
past, I mean,
you mean?
yeah, Krovinovic, where the way Pizzi has in the past, the way Pizzi's playing now, hey, it might be worth a shot to drop the two interior guys and put another guy up front and see what happens. But I'm thinking, especially after the game that we played on the weekend, that finally some kind of interplay. There's a little bit of meshing in that midfield, and hopefully it's going to grow from there. But there's no doubt. I've been defending Pizzi for years when everyone thought he was garbage, and this year he's just basically been garbage. Previously, I think I had a good reason to be defending him. At this point, I'm really struggling. I mean, the performances are speaking for themselves.
I mean, I got to be honest, guys. I'm as shocked as anyone that he even touched the ball 36 times.
38.
38. Whatever. I did not. I mean, in my mind, I do not recall him touching the ball that many times. That's tough to be honest.
Yeah, Cristiano, let me ask you this. I know that we have speculated about whether Rui Vitória had lost his team because of the lack of consistency, because of some performances the team just checks out. But in a game like this, we spoke about there's no extra motivation that the coaches need to give because all these players are going to be motivated. Do you feel that in a game like this, players play for themselves, for their pride?
Absolutely. I mean, I think if there is a player in that locker room on either side, okay, whether it's Sporting or Benfica's locker room, that needs a coach to motivate them at this level for a game like that, I don't want that guy in my locker room. If you can't get up for a game like this on your own, you have no business in my locker room. I think there's a lot of crap that obviously have spilled over to the papers, to the press, and Rui Vitória has touched on it. And I'm pretty sure the players have been asked about it by their family members because we know that the media there, these guys don't get, or the media don't get the same access to the guys there like they do here. So these guys don't have to answer those questions on a daily basis like the guys here would do, for example, right? So they're lucky on that. But I'm pretty sure their neighbors and their family members are asking them about all that stuff that's going on. And I'm pretty sure that's a little seed in their head. But again, you're playing Sporting, okay? You're bitter rivals from the same city, two kilometers apart, whatever the hell it is, right? These guys probably some of them live in the same complexes. If you need a coach to motivate you for a game like that, look, do me a favor, ask for a transfer and get the hell out of my club.
Yeah. So, but for you, do you think that if the team wasn't with the coach, that this would have been a game that we could have noticed it?
No. Again, I'll go back to what I just said. I think these guys want to perform in games like these. They know everyone, not just everyone in Portugal, but everyone outside of Portugal. The big media, the big media stations, there are TV stations, radio, everybody, news coverage. They'll all be watching a game like this. They're focusing in on it because it's one of the biggest games in Portugal. I mean, we only play 6 big games in Portugal. This is one of them. If you can't get up for this, so you need extra motivation.
I agree with Cristiano, but I want to add something. Alfredo, you were talking about Vitória and the changes that he made taking out Pizzi. The striking contrast for me in this game was the tactical courage that Rui Vitória had and the absolute paralysis that Jorge Jesus suffered in this game. You could tell at the end of the first half that things were not working for Sporting, not necessarily tactically, but personnel-wise. As I said before, Bruno Fernandes was marked out of the game. Bas Dost, also too isolated. He can bring the ball down and he can disperse the ball to the wings or to whoever is facing the opposition goal, but he was too isolated to really be threatening. And in the on the opportunities that he had in the box, and not really opportunities, but the times where he was in the box, Sporting didn't deliver balls. The only guy who tried to cross for Sporting was Acuna, and most of his crosses were wayward. But when I talk about the paralysis that Jorge Jesus suffered, it took him too long to make changes, and the changes he made were not the appropriate changes, whereas Rui Vitória made all the appropriate changes. I think that bringing in Jimenez was very good, a very good decision, because it freed up Jonas a little bit of space behind him. I think bringing Rafa into this game was also very good, because speed was really troubling Sporting's back line, Mathieu and Coates, even though they didn't have to face Rafa necessarily. The speed that he brought to the game made it more difficult for Sporting. The difficulties that Gelson Martins was having throughout that game basically were enough for Jesus to make the decision to pull him off much earlier than he did. He should have brought Bodens into this game. I think the kind of trickery that he brings to a game would have been adequate in a field where there was very little space, where Benfica was allowing very little space for Sporting to maneuver. And once, this is my last point here, once Bastos was basically neutralized in this game and Sporting was playing on the counter-attack, it was just, I couldn't understand. I was incredulous at the fact that Doumbia was left on the bench, a guy who could have perhaps spread the game for Sporting a little and given them a little something else to focus on in the counterattack, as opposed to looking for Bastos, who's not going to beat anybody for speed. He's just going to play almost as a pivot up top to receive the ball and dish it out. So there were a lot of mistakes here that Jesus made, and they were really exemplified by his decisions not to make substitutions, or by the substitutions that he decided to make.
Having Bastos on the field when playing the counterattack system was like Benfica when they had Cardoso on the field. Made absolutely no sense. And I agree with you. Someone with a little bit more pace would obviously threaten the Benfica back line a lot more. Now, I speculated, you guys recall, Eric, I speculated on last week's pod as to whether Pudens was going to get the start instead of Bataglia, because I thought JJ was going to look at the way Benfica had been playing, the form. You know, you guys were confident going into this game. I thought he was going to play that guy because he offered a little bit more of that creativity to get a guy like Bastos involved and play off of Gelson Martins. He obviously did not do that. Now, last point, to go back to, you know, I know you guys are giving Rui Vitória some credit here. And I tip my cap to him. He seems to finally have gotten the Rafa substitute right. Okay, fine.
It's only one game, dude.
Exactly. It's only one game. But you know what? He pushed the right button in this game. But to sit here and say, you know what? I give him credit because he had the guts to, my man, his back was against the wall. You lose this game, it's sayonara. I mean,
sayonara.
Look, I told you guys already. If Benfica do not win the Penta, I don't want this guy back next year. I don't want him back. He had his back against the wall. He had to perform. He had to make changes. He could have just sit there and say, all right, you know what? We're going to make the usual subs that I do on a week in, week out basis. Yeah. I mean, we'll wait to the 70th minute. He had his back against the wall.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he waited that long to make the changes.
No,
I mean, 55th minute, he's making a change for Pizzi. Then he's taking out Fesa, who, by the way, had a yellow card. Brings out, and then he brings Jimenez. And
that
then
was the gutsiest move. No, that's why Rafa comes in, wasn't it?
No, Rafa comes in at the end, no?
No. The last one is João Carvalho.
João Carvalho for Ruben. Rafa came in for Fesa in the 73rd minute.
You know what did it?
Yeah, and that's when he really shakes up the team, because he brings Salvi to right back. He puts Andre Almeida to the defensive midfield. For me, that was the gutsiest move. And
yeah, because you touch a lot of sectors there.
Exactly. You're touching a lot of sectors. You're making a lot of changes. But it was a game that the way that the game was shaped, with all that space in between the lines for Sporting, for God knows what reason, is tailor-made for Rafa and that speed, the way he likes to run at people.
Yeah.
I think he actually...
Steve,
I think that was one of his better performances for us.
Absolutely. Steve, you jump right back in. But you know what ticked me off here was, and again, not criticizing the player. Okay, let's keep that in mind. I'm not criticizing the player, but Rui Vitória seems to do this in every big game. He comes with João Carvalho into games. João Carvalho was played 2 minutes all season, and he did the same thing last year with Danilo, Danilo winds up leaving a couple weeks later. He always brings these guys that have not been in the rotation, guys who have not played much. He has the tendency of bringing these guys out of the freaking stands and throwing them into. I would have liked to see someone that's been getting a lot more playing, not criticizing the player, but it boggles my mind that he does this every
had
game.
Played 2 games in a row.
Almost scored a golazo, huh?
Yeah.
He played 2 games in a row. So
again, not criticizing his performance or the player. It's the move.
I think the thing that Vitória has
played instead, Chris.
Yeah, I think that.
What'd you say, Steve?
Who would you have played instead? Seferovic?
Look, again, guys, see if you grasp what I'm trying to say.
Who hasn't played in even longer?
He doesn't play. Seferovic has been part of the A team all season long. That's my point. He likes to play. He did it last year. We all you guys recall. I questioned that. The one appearance he made with the Primera Liga, Danilo. He always does this, and it just leaves you scratching your mind, scratching your brain. I mean, like your head.
I think that one thing that Vitória has is he tries to get in the player's head, and I think that he's a good judge of what motivates a player and times that players are motivated. And I think that he's been able to pull good things out of guys that don't play that much. It seems that João Carvalho's horse has finally passed his house, and he's now getting a chance. I mean, God knows what goes on with Zivkovic. That's a whole conversation on its own. But he took advantage of Gonçalves at one point. Then he's now back to Servi. Now he's putting in João Carvalho a little bit at a time. So maybe there's something that he's reading that these guys are finally ready.
I'm okay with that. Against the Vitória Setúbal, the Chaves, the Feirense, right? But in a big game like this, you're bringing a kid off the stands who hasn't played all season long.
But he didn't play bad.
But again, did I not say let's forget about the player or the performance? It's the choice that he makes. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, guys, I mean, I get it.
I'm gonna add a little bit of sporting perspective, and I'm gonna say you know that I'm not a clubista, and I appreciate good football. And one of the players that really impressed me was Krovinovic. His performance was outstanding, not only in the effort, the fouls that he won in midfield when he was destabilizing the 2 back lines for Sporting. This was a guy that's simply outstanding. I think that had he not been on the field, we might have seen a slightly different game. I really believe that. He was the catalyst for so much of what happened in that game. I'm kind of surprised that you guys haven't mentioned so far the controversial calls in that game.
We don't need to.
I want to add to that, one of the things that I found appalling during that game, and I don't know if you guys saw my tweets, but I fully believe that if there were justice in the game, Benfica would have gotten the 3 points. Sporting were very fortunate with all those ricochets in the area that never went into Patricio's goals. He actually only made 2 saves in that game, which is crazy to think about.
Right. His defenders made 4.
William Carvalho had more blocks than Rui Patricio.
And Battaglia, the number of tackles, I think it was 4 or 5 tackles that he made in that game. It was so unjust that he was the guy who got called for that penalty. But one thing that needs to be said, I was watching the game on Benfica TV, and I was absolutely appalled.
Subscription.
I was absolutely appalled at how terrible those commentators were. It was unreal. I know they work for Benfica, but it was absolutely embarrassing.
You prefer Freitas Lobo?
Do I prefer Freitas Lobo? I don't even know who that guy is.
You don't know who he is. Your boy Bruno Carvalho tried to hire him to be basically your general manager and run your soccer department.
Oh, okay.
He's the guy on Sport TV. He's the guy on Sport TV.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about I thought you're right.
Look.
Listen,
I don't think they're half bad. I don't look. There's times, Eric, where I'm like, okay, you got to be a little bit more biased, but I don't think they're half bad. I mean, look, when you watch a game on
RTP, I'm biased?
I think they're all crap. Every commentator in Portugal is crap.
I watched the RTP and the guy. Just Sportingista all day. Sport TV is just, but it is what it is, bro.
What I'm saying is the level of commentary on Benfica TV was, and of course it is Benfica TV. There's an understanding there, but it was so one-sided. the vitriol that was said about Fabio Coentrão.
He deserved it.
Yo, is he okay? By the way, is he all right? His leg,
he had a concussion.
I know he played already again, but is he? I mean, I'm pretty sure he's getting special treatment.
I mean, all players do that. It's embarrassing for him. I understand that, but even in the analysis of VAR plays, it showed a complete misunderstanding of how VAR is supposed to work in the game, and I thought that was simply unacceptable for people who are broadcasting this game internationally.
Yeah, I mean, look, it is. I don't. They could be a lot more homely, or more homers than they are. I know that they try to be as unbiased as possible, but every once in a while that sticks out. But it is the club's channel, so I don't expect them to be tearing up players, this and that.
I wouldn't expect to turn on Sporting TV and watch a game of theirs and have the guys, oh, Benfica, grande máquina, Benfica. No, Porto. I mean, it is. I mean, look, I agree with you, but it is the club's.
Look, just to finish up and to move on to the next topic, and I know that Derek probably wants to bounce also. But here's the thing that I wanted to say to you, Eric, and there's no sense in us and talking about calls here, because I think that there's enough shows out there that discuss those calls ad nauseum. There's always seems to be a different perspective, and everyone has their own bias. But aside from that, just looking at the overall picture of this game and your overall feeling, do you think that Sporting went into this game underestimating Benfica, or do you think they showed too much respect for Benfica?
I actually think that they didn't think it was going to be a cakewalk. That's for sure. I don't think they underestimated them. I think that they were really taken by the environment. I think they were intimidated by what they saw, whether that's the fans in the stands or the way that Benfica took the game to them. It just simply seemed that Sporting was ill prepared for this game. Tactically, as Steve said, there were massive holes in the midfield that were well exploited by Benfica's players, especially Krovinovic. So I think ultimately that is down to Jorge Jesus. I know you guys know that I'm not his biggest fan. And it seems to me that in big games, he seems to more often than not drop the ball. And this was one of those games, because player for player, this should have been a much more even event than it was, despite the final result with the sharing of the points.
I don't buy that at all.
I don't disagree.
I buy the part where maybe they weren't prepared. But I don't buy that maybe they were intimidated by the atmosphere, what they saw. Yeah, I mean, this is a team that went into the Bernabeu last year, and according to JJ, if you hadn't gotten a red card, you would have beaten Real Madrid.
San Siro. They go there
they went to Juventus, and they went to Camp Nou. Yeah. That's where I was going. And this team, they didn't look like the light was too bright for them. So, I don't know. Look,
look, Cristiano, I think
inner city rival came into play, maybe. But I think it's more of, maybe they were ill-prepared for a game like this, more so than what they saw around and surroundings and stuff like that.
Perhaps, and I think you make a good point. When you talk about Sporting at the Bernabeu last season, that was a fantastic game where Sporting, for me, were the superior team. But again, we ended up losing that game, and I think it comes down to bad decision-making in the tail end of the game, for Jorge Jesus. I also think that Sporting last season played better football than they have this season. I think they're grinding out results this season, but they haven't always impressed me. And I haven't, I would be lying if I said that I've watched every single game, but I'm not so impressed by what I've seen this season. And I certainly think that performance against Benfica leaves us with a lot of questions about Jorge Jesus and his tactical acumen or player choices.
Well, in fairness to JJ here, guys, all right, it's not easy to replace Adrian Silva with Bataglia. You're going to expect football to be a little bit different for this club going forward. You're going to expect the rhythm of play. I mean, look, I think us Benfiquistas, and I know this is a Benfica podcast, but I don't think, even though we see him on the national team level, we don't appreciate Adrian Silva, how good he was, at least in the Portuguese league. We're yet to see what he does over in EPL, but in the Portuguese, how key and how good he was for this team alongside William Carvalho.
All right, let's wrap up this Sporting game 1-1 as the game finished, and if you watched the game, and Benfica, as Eric mentioned, should have came out of that game with the 3 points, but it is what it is. I mean, we stay with the same distance to Sporting. We lose 2 points to Porto, and now we have some important games coming up. Eric, where can people find you on the internet these days? Are you writing? Are you podcasting? What's your story, man?
I've taken a break from podcasting. Unfortunately, my schedule is too overwhelming right now at BN. You can check me out every Tuesday on the Turkish Highlight Show, and I'm doing some work with the
Turkish highlights. Well,
I know Turkish.
It's a hot league now.
It's a very hot league right now. It's a fantastic league. So any of the listeners who want to see a lot of Portuguese players playing for clubs like Besiktas and other clubs in Turkey, I definitely suggest you watch that. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Krakauer, and if you're in Canada, you can hear me commentate on the Europa League this season.
Yeah, Eric, how do you remember all the pronunciations on those Turkish names?
I just yell.
I gotta be honest here. I fear for Eric, man. I feel for him.
Why?
I mean, it took you like he was tall. He was the one that came out and said it takes big cojones. He gave big cojones. It took big cojones for Rui Vitória to make some of those changes. And I think it takes big cojones for him to come here on the podcast. Especially Bruno Carvalho might ban him from the Sporting magazine. I mean, you put that at risk.
That's right.
I mean,
Eric, did you check with Sporting, make sure it was okay for you to come on? I know you were featured on their publication.
They've already done a profile on me on the newspaper. I don't think they need to do a second, so I'm okay.
They also did Steph Teixeira on that.
Who's that?
Did they really?
my own personal friend. Yeah, they did a piece much like Eric's piece on Steph Teixeira.
All right.
He's part of the Tiki Taka podcast and also Sporting Updates. He's behind that.
Yeah, cool.
Sporting Updates UK. Eric, always a pleasure, man. And I think that I wouldn't have just invited any Sporting fan. I think that the interactions that we've had through the time that we've known each other, I've always enjoyed speaking to you, talking football, because I know you're a level-headed guy. You do have your love for your club, but you're not a guy that's so blinded that you can't see things the way they are. And I think for the most part, that's how we are here also. So I think that your view and your angles on football and on your club itself, I think blended well on this participation of yours on our podcast.
Let's not give the guy too much credit. I mean, his team has been in third place every single year. I mean, let the guy win, and then we'll see his real character.
Well, look, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I really feel that I really wanted to be on and talk about Sporting because I was very disappointed with what I saw. So it was great being on with you guys, and keep doing your good work, and I hope to talk to you soon.
Eric, fine, bro. I'll send the care package.
Have a good one.
Adios.
Ciao.
So on to the next game. Benfica played Moreirense this past weekend. I'll give you the lineup. We'll start with that, then we'll try to catch up here. We're deep into this podcast. Varela was in goal. Almeida Dias, Ruben Dias, Jardel, and Grimaldo across the back. Samaris, Pizzi, and Krovinovic in the midfield triangle. Krovinovic, which by the way got his 7th consecutive start, Cristiano. Salvi on one wing, Servi on the other, Jonas the lone striker. So nothing new here. Feza did pick up a yellow card against Sporting. He then sat out for his 5th consecutive, so he can play. We had somebody step in and play in that role. And for the 45 minutes that he played, I thought he played well. Smallest pitch in the Liga NOS for Moreirense. And Cristiano asked me where Moreirense was, and all I could tell him was that it's in Moreira de Conegos.
And we still didn't look it up on the map.
Yeah, we don't know that.
Part of me thinks we've had this conversation on this podcast before.
We probably have. It's
always Moreirense, Rio, the green and white teams. We always question where the hell these teams
Well,
are
if I know exactly where they're from.
Well, Rio Ave is
I know
Porto,
exactly
no?
where Vila do Conde is, but Moreira de Conegos, or however you say it, Moreira
Yeah.
dos Conegos, I have no clue.
Yeah, we need to add that facet to Dave's research to have a map
It's
of
in the
Portugal in
I
front
have
of
a
him.
map of Portugal.
It's in the
It's near
Guimarães.
Guimarães.
Yep.
There you go. So anyway, Benfica getting on the scoreboard, 23 minutes in, Pizzi 1-0, and as David mentioned, every game that Pizzi has scored, Benfica has won, and I think that streak is now 28 games. Dave,
24. 28 goals in 24 games.
there you go. So it is what it is. So every time you see Pizzi score, there's a good chance Benfica is going to win. Cristiano himself, he thought there was a pitu by the goalie. I thought there was
that
close
terrible.
range.
First of all, the rule of soccer, and Steve would agree with me here. Anytime a goalie gets beat near post, it's his fault. And to me, he tries to cradle that rather than put his body in a way, which he would have just made a block, would have blocked the ball with his body.
Yeah.
And I think, look, to me, it was a pitu. And again, he's aside from that,
yeah, a good first half by Benfica, and then the second half, I don't know if they're just maybe Cristiano, along with the care packet that you sent to Eric, maybe you should send some smelling salts to Benfica. Maybe those guys can get some smelling salts at the half, so when they come up awake. Again, some apathy from Benfica coming out in the second half. Letting Moreirense come into the game. We also saw Samaris go out injured, and Keaton Parks, U.S. made product out of Texas, come in and play a decent 45 minutes. I thought that that's not really his position. Keaton, he's a little bit more up on the pitch, but the way that Benfica was playing, if he could understand the positional that he needed to be, I thought he was going to do well. He plays a very simple ball out of the back. He still gets caught on some of the timings of the tackles because, like I said, he's not the guy that's going to steal and win those balls every single time because that's not really his position. But Steve, I know that we have spoken about Keaton Parks. We probably still haven't seen a lot of Keaton Parks for you to have a really formed good opinion of him. But what do you think so far?
The jury's still out. You've seen 45 minutes of him playing 6 in a game where, for the most part, I thought we were pretty comfortable. You mentioned, we may have let him in a little bit more, but I never felt like we were really that stretched. I didn't feel like he was with counterattacks and needing to show his defensive nous. Comfortable enough on the ball. He looks like a big, strong boy. It's hard to get a good idea of that kind of player. Doesn't pick up the ball and you know right away that this guy's got that touch. He's got that skill. Heads up, knows where his next pass is. He doesn't have that. So it's hard to say whether you could mold him into the type of box-to-box player that's kind of important in football, where he's a more physical presence. He doesn't really make mistakes, but he doesn't really do anything extravagant. He might become there, but it's still too early to say. I can't say I think he's awful, but I don't think he's great yet either.
But maybe that's
in Stante for just for argument's sake, similar age. The moment Cristante touches the ball, you knew there because he had that range of passing. He had the nice first touch. He had a certain way of carrying himself when he has the ball. You knew it's a different type of player. Keaton Parks, and I see it. Yeah, he's a football player. He can do things adequately, but he doesn't seem to be special.
Listen, man,
I'll reserve that there.
To say special, I don't think we've seen enough yet to say whether he's special or not. I think he'll be a very good player. Whether it'll be special or not, there's not too many special guys around the world. Let's just mention that. That being said, I thought he came into the game. He was a little bit feeling his way around things. You could tell he's playing a defensive center mid position that he's probably not very accustomed to playing, or he hasn't played it at this level many times. And then you could tell he grew into the game. He's very good on the ball. The one thing I do like about him, guys, and I said this his very first appearance for Benfica, which is he looks very comfortable with the ball at his feet.
Yeah, confident.
Very confident. You know, he looks like he knows what he wants to do, and he plays simple. He's not out there trying to impress and juke guys and one touch too many. And that's the one thing I like about him, Steve. I mean, whether he's special or not, it's we'll see. In time, we'll see. But according to what some of the papers are reporting, and again, half of the papers, half of the stuff that comes out of the page is BS. But according to them, Rivitoria wants to turn Keaton Parks into Matic. He wants to turn him into
like a hybrid.
Yes, a guy that, because the one thing about Matic, he can play the ball from that defensive center mid position, unlike many guys could.
Yeah,
he's got a very nice play and he knows what to do. So he's trying to,
and he's tall, he's physical. So let's see what develops. It is early, but I do like some of. I mean, for a young kid that comes to Europe and is playing for one of the biggest club in Portugal, and has been put in situations where he probably wasn't expecting to come in this game at all in the 45th minute and to play on that position. On top of it, you got to give the kid some credit to how we adapted. Then again, you're looking at somebody that's receiving instructions from Rui Vitória, and even though he wasn't too challenged in that position, there's certain things that you need to do from that position. You need to make sure that you're doubling up guys that are stepping up, they're leaving holes behind themselves to make sure that you're in front of the defensive line and you kind of blocking those. So there's a certain amount of instructions that are given to him and that he has to follow. So in that aspect, I thought that he did well in that aspect, but there's a lot of things, and I think that he could do a lot more time. We'll just have to see. I'm just glad that he's getting the opportunities and he's not squandering, to what I've been able to see. So we look forward to seeing more of Keaton Parks playing for Benfica, and maybe if not this season, maybe next season we could see him feature more minutes. 2-0, Benfica puts away the game. Jonas 2-0, his 20th goal of the season. 6 games now in a row that Jonas has scored. Moreirense, Sporting, Portimonense, Tondela, twice in Rio Ave and Estoril. So quite a record for Jonas, but Stevie missed quite a few opportunities also.
Yeah, he missed way more goals than he normally does, and sometimes I can remember one where he had a lot of time to really control the ball and choose his spot, and he didn't. It in the finishing department, it was not one of his better displays, but he was his typical self. I mean, the way he plays and makes others play around him, like him. You can Pizzi, Krovinovic, whoever you want to say, there is, can make his team better. Our team, I don't think, anyway.
Yeah. And after the first round is finished, he's in quite a list here of players who have scored a lot of goals after the first round. And I know that in the 60s we weren't playing as many jornadas, but Eusebio's at the top of that with 22 goals in the 1964-1965 season. Mats Magnussen, 21 goals in the 89-90 season. Then Jonas now with 20 goals in the 2017-2018 season. And then you got guys going down the list, Julinho going down there. So it's quite an impressive list to be part of, and we know that Jonas has been killing it this year. I mean, you take away Jonas, I don't know where Benfica is going to get their goal production. That's how important he has been in the goal production that Benfica has had. So we're at the turn now. We're about to play Braga, but at the turn, this is basically what Benfica has done at the turn. And I wanted to look back at the last 3 years that Benfica, what Benfica has done at the turn. So last season, Benfica was 42 points, 13 wins, 3 ties, and 1 defeat. 37 goal scores, 11 allowed. They have more plus 26. They were in first. 26 points. In 2015-2016 season, Benfica had 40 points out of 13 wins, 1 tie, and three defeats. Is that correct? That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct.
Dave is throwing up these stats here, and I'm reading them as we go along. And 45 goals scored in the 2015-2016 season, 11 goals allowed. So there's a plus 34 differential there. They were second in the 2015-2016 season, 4 points behind Sporting. Where we are right now, I guess we have the same amount of points that we had back in the 2015-2016 season. We have just been bested by our opponents in Porto and Sporting, who have had a better first round record than we have had this season compared to past years. So now we head to Braga. We go to the Pedreira to meet Braga in a very difficult game that comes at a crucial stage of the season. Both Benfica and Braga already out of the Taça de Portugal. Benfica will only play on the weekends now, with the exception of any games that are scheduled for the middle of the week. But Benfica won't be playing any additional games. Last 10 against Braga, 8 wins, 1 draw, and 1 loss. Last 5 at the Pedreira, 3 wins, 2 losses. This season against Braga in the first round of the Liga NOS, 3-1 win at the Luz. Seferovic, Jonas, and Salvio scored. And then we had a 1-1 draw at the Luz for the Taça de Liga. Last season, Benfica needed a wonder goal from Mitroglou in the 80th minute to secure victory in Braga. We always know that those Braga games are difficult. Braga is currently 4th place, just 3 points behind Benfica. 37 points from 12 wins, 1 tie, and 4 losses. At home, 8 wins, 0 ties, and 1 loss. Cristiano, very, very tough game for Benfica, especially knowing that Braga has only lost 1 game at the Pedreira this year, and that was against Porto in the first round.
Yeah, absolutely. But the one thing Benfica do have in their favor, you look at their history, their track record up there, up north against Braga, they always find a way to come away with the goal. Like you guys mentioned, Mitroglou with that goal on the tippy toe looked like he was valet dancing a little bit, and he found a way to squeak it in near post or between the goalie's legs. I don't remember right now. But yeah, I think Benfica needs to piggyback on this great performance that they had at the start to lose against Sporting that we talked about just now, and need to keep this up, man. I mean, we need to put pressure on our rivals, and hopefully this past game is going to, it's a springboard for the next couple of games for us to stay there and compete with the Portos and Sportings of the world.
Steve, Braga is coming off of 2 consecutive wins against Boa Vista and Rio Ave. They seem to have hit some stride. They struggled a little bit in the beginning of the season, if you want to call that a struggle. But it looks like their coach, and I forget his name now, Abel Ferreira, has turned it around, has found quite a good mix of talent. Of course, that team features the Horta brothers as we know them. But he's managed to put quite a good consecutive streak on, even though they were eliminated off the Taça CTT, the Taça de Liga. They are a very good team at home, and the fact that they have only lost 1 game, that speaks for itself at home. What are you anticipating for this game for Benfica?
Well, the good thing, just for player personnel, is I believe Andre Horta won't be able to play as he's there on loan, and he's a super important player for them. At the beginning of actually ever since last year, I kept on reading some good pieces from people that I trust about Abel, and they all had good words to say about him. And when Benfica played Braga at the beginning of the season, I found them kind of naive. I found them a bit too open and a bit too easy to play through. Let's see what brings. I mean, I saw bits and pieces of the game versus Rio Ave, and they look like a very tight and well-rehearsed defensive unit. I'm interested to see what they feel they have to do versus Benfica at home. If they feel that they will press the ball and need to press high, I think we might be able to get through them and get a good result, maybe a good showing. if they feel where they're going to sit back, keep a compact block and try to play on the counter with Wilson and Ricardo Horta, I think they may pose some problems if we are not as efficient as we can be. I think, like Chris said, if we could use this momentum in this Braga game, it's going to be, I think, the team between the Sporting game and the Moreirense game, you're starting to see a little bit more fluidity, a little bit more football. I mean, Servi and Grimaldo have been really good down the left for us. I think Grimaldo is sectors from the defensive sector to the midfield. He's the best we have. We have the opportunity to just keep on winning and hope that between the two teams ahead of us that they're going to drop points and make it a game where we have control of our own destiny, because as of right now we do not. So that's what we can only hope for.
Guy who's been playing really well for them, guys. Just throw that out there. He's had a really good first half. And the other thing is this: keep in mind, all right. And I know Benfica history has been on their side, but Benfica's at 40 points. Braga's at 37. They could pull level with Benfica. So, I mean, they're always up for a game like this, even though Benfica always finds themselves on the right side of the score sheet, on the score line. But it's also extra motivation for them that they could pull within level within third place. So it's going to be a very tough game. But like we just touched on, hopefully they'll piggyback off of this performance that no one expected over. Well, just 2 games. We might talk. There's a Moreirense in between.
But regardless, you played on Wednesday and then you played on Sunday.
But hopefully they'll piggyback off of those 2 performances and keep the streak going forward.
No, absolutely. I expect Benfica needs to show up for this game. There's got to be consistency in what they've been showing us so far. And as Steve mentioned, there's some routines that we're seeing that we would have liked to have seen earlier in the season. So it's encouraging to finally see them. It's the beginning, but it's encouraging that we're starting to see these routines, these combinations. I know that Krovinovic has been absolutely crucial in what Benfica has been trying to do, but also, other guys that are stepping up. Grimaldo, the fact that he has remained healthy, and knock on wood, and then other guys, in the center of defense, Jardel, the more rhythm he gets, it seems the more consistent he becomes, and he's not a guy that's going to shut down everyone, but he's a guy that will bring you a consistent performance. And then you got Ruben Dias, who's also getting minutes under his belt, and then Almeida, it is what it is.
Benfica has to make a decision here, whether it's going to be Keaton Parks or it has to be someone else from the outside. They have to get themselves a solid replacement for Fejsa. I don't think that guy's on the roster right now. I know Samaris comes in and he does well at times. Other times he's not the same player. What's his name? Augusto? I always get this guy's name.
I think
right.
he's done.
Thank God he fell off the planet. Thank God.
But he's still on the roster.
He's on the roster,
that's
but
what I'm saying.
he's
I'm talking about guys that are on the
he's
roster.
no longer getting called.
Yeah.
Fine. But out of the guys on the roster, we still don't have a suitable backup for Fejsa. And I think right now during the January transfer market, they need to do. We did sign a new guy who's supposed to be Paulie Valente, who plays out on the wings, right? What's the new guy that we just signed?
Rakip.
A guy, we're going to invest.
It hasn't been officially announced.
Oh, it
I was
hasn't.
going to say that wasn't confirmed.
No. Neither him nor the
think
goal
anything's
have been
been
officially
confirmed.
announced.
Okay, that part I thought it was.
There was pictures of him at the Aeroporto, but there hasn't been officially announced. And I think that Rui Vitória was asked in the press conference. Is that what you're going to say, Steve? Rui Vitória was asked in the press conference, and he said, "Have they been announced?" So,
well, I think they need to make some acquisitions here.
Yeah, well, let's see.
There's one in the news that I think is a bit far-fetched.
Darmian, is it?
Yeah.
Cristiano has gone on record for the Twitter world, and he said that he will paint his hair purple.
I'll die.
Dye his hair purple if Darmian comes to Benfica.
Dude, there's no I don't understand what the Portuguese press is doing. Who the hell's making up these transfer rumors? But I guess it's a pipe dream. I mean, when you have, gigantic teams from his own country that are interested in his signing and his services. I mean, unless we see some shadiness, unless we see some Atletico Madrid under the table shadiness, I don't see it. I just don't see it.
Yeah. Well, the only thing playing in the favor of the transfer, I believe it was Juve and I don't remember who the other team is.
Napoli.
Napoli. Is he guaranteed starts at right back for either of those teams?
Come on, dude. I mean, Steve,
Is
I
he?
don't give a crap if he's going to sit the bench. He's going
Chris,
to
but
go
he,
to the
he'll want to go to the World Cup just like anybody else.
He's
So
gonna
if he
go to a
plays,
team.
we can.
Oh, did he cut out?
He's
going to go to a team, Steve, that one is going to pick up the most out of his wages. And Benfica's not going to be that team. At the end of the day, Manchester United is going to have a say in this. And I think he's going to want to go back home, whether it's Napoli, whether it's AC Milan is interested. All the big teams in Italy are interested in him. What would you rather do? Go to an unknown country, play in a campionato that doesn't get much respect anyway, or go home?
Chris, devil's advocate. I agree with you. I'm just saying, for sure, he's going to play at Benfica if he comes. The other clubs, he might have a bit stiffer competition.
First of all, I don't even think he's going to leave United. I think United has so many injuries in the back line that Mourinho is going to be forced to hold on to him. That's what I think, but that's besides the point.
Yeah. So that's it. Let's wrap this up.
I'm still waiting for the signings Benfica, the $20 million that Benfica's going to invest.
Tens tempo ainda, man.
Tá behind.
What's the day? The 9th?
Tá
You got
behind.
time. Anyway, let's wrap this up. BenficaPodcast.com is where you can visit us on the web at 10CO10, at Benfica Podcast, at Steve Santos 6 is where you can find us on Twitter. planetbenfica.co.uk. Visit them for all your Benfica news. Also, would like to thank Eric Krakauer for making the appearance. You can follow him on Twitter at Eric with the C, Krakauer, Krakauer.
It's like happy hour, crack hour.
Yeah.
Like that.
It's happy hour with crack. Yeah. Eric as the most non-Portuguese name I've ever heard. Anyway, that's all for us. David, anything that you want to throw out there? You got a Facebook page you want to
I'm not on social media.
Nah, I don't blame you, man. I'm glad I want to turn back and I can't.
I want to give a big shout out to Ricardinho. Benfica won his 5th Ballon d'Or.
There you go.
Football.
Best futsal player in the world. 5th for Ricardinho. Congratulations, Ricardinho. Anyway, we will be back next week. We will break down the Braga game. We'll look ahead to Benfica's next game, which is Braga. Chaves.
It is Chaves after Braga.
Yes.
Doing my homework. Anyway, thanks everybody for checking us out. Don't forget to follow us on iTunes and subscribe and all that good stuff. Thank you very much, and I'll talk to you again next week. See ya.